All right. Hey, everybody. Coach Matt here, S3 CrossFit, and I'm excited to get on live. Z. She's the Chief Science Officer and the one of the co-founders at Third Z, and they make that PM Recovery Collagen. Hey, Dr.
Hi.
Justine, I was just talking about you.
Oh, great.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I didn't realize quite
Yeah,
how
I was
dark it was in here.
getting ready to say, you look like you're sitting outside in the dark.
Yeah, I'm not outside in the dark. It's just weirdly. Give me 1 sec. I'm gonna turn some
Yeah, no,
lights
no,
on.
it's okay.
There we go.
That's all right. I was just talking about how excited I am to talk to you, and I was super thrilled that you were able to do this, and then you guys invited me. So thank you for that opportunity. So
Oh, thank you. I've been looking forward to
yeah,
this all day.
great. I've been nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I don't do a lot of lives kind of thing. I'm a little bit in that upper age group for masters, so I don't do this very often kind of thing. But I'm excited. I'm nervous and excited and everything. So
Oh, good. That's a good state. It's like a good focus state when you're a little excited and
absolutely,
nervous, right? It's like that three, two,
yep,
one, go kind of feeling.
absolutely. Just as nervous. So I was gonna say, if you don't mind, I'll jump right in. I know one of the big things that I saw and that our members have talked about too as well was like looking when I look at your bio and you were saying like as a in your practice you started to dive deep into sleep research. And just a quick little thing about me. So this year I'll turn 50, and so I'm kind of doing a little bit, obviously not the same. I'm not a researcher or a doctor kind of person, but I'm researching a lot of like recovery things, and sleep's obviously number one. Um, so what were some of the things that you were seeing in your practice that led you to that path? You're like, oh my gosh, almost everybody I know is struggling with sleep when it comes to their health and fitness.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I don't think you should also downplay the fact of like researching yourself, right?
Yep.
Like whether you're a doctor or not, finding the answers for yourself is always going to be like the better path for you, right? So for me, and even when I went through school, so I did like health sciences, and then I became a chiropractor, and we learned a ton about physiology and the brain and brain health, and we learned about sleep, but not as deeply as you would think. Like we
Hmm.
learned to understand sleep cycles, and we learned more about kind of like sleep pathology. Like, okay, well, if somebody has insomnia, then they got to go for this, or that kind of thing. And so, but once I got into practice, and a lot of my practice was actually focused on working with people who were already fairly healthy. Like I was also coaching CrossFit at the time, helping people on the nutrition side. And so a lot of people coming into my office were actually like young, healthy individuals who maybe were rehabbing an injury or were trying to keep their body moving well and staying functional. And so I was really blown away by the fact that almost every single person coming in also indicated on their intake forms that they weren't sleeping well. And so I started to kind of dig in. I'm like, is this just like because we're all hard driving, because we're all taking too many stimulants? Like, what is the issue here? And I think the realization that I came to pretty early on is that we treat sleep too much like an on-off function and not enough like a process, right? So I think especially people who are in like the health and wellness space are used to thinking about process when it comes to things like training, right? We understand that there's like certain habits, certain nutrients, certain things that we can do within our bodies to create this physiological change, whether it's wanting to put on more lean mass or wanting to get faster. You need to train
Right.
cardio in zone 2 if you want to increase your endurance. And I think that when it comes to sleep, I just realized we have so few tools and so few experts who even really kind of understand like what is it that contributes to this process and how can we start to move things along that spectrum of making things better instead of just like, okay, did I sleep or didn't I sleep, right? That would
Right.
just kind of be like saying like, can I squat 400 pounds or can I not squat 400 pounds, right?
That's
Like
a great
there's steps
analogy.
in the
Yeah.
middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so like I guess maybe let's peel out a little bit more. So like what were some of the things you started to either try with the practice? Again, kind of maybe the bridge between what you found and then when you made PM recovery collagen formula, the Third Z formula, like what was kind of that path that led you to that?
Yeah. So initially, I found that kind of when we looked at, supplementation or even kind of like dealing with sleep problems, there was the medical way of doing it, which very often relies heavily on sedatives,
Hmm.
right? Or like drug interventions to say, okay, well, you just need to, if you can't fall asleep at night, if you can't wind down or whatever, like we can give you an anti-anxiety, like an Ambien or like a benzodiazepine, that kind of thing, or we can give you another kind of like sleep drug that will just kind of knock you out. Or on the natural side, it just seemed like almost everything was just melatonin.
Right.
And certainly there's a time and a place for melatonin, and particularly people who are, shift workers or jet lagged or really off their sleep schedule, melatonin can be helpful. But once you understand how hormones work and the way that they regulate with each other and the way that there are these feedback loops where they also will downregulate, right? Like if you're
Hmm.
taking a hormone that from outside your body's going to stop making as much of that hormone. So it's also going to affect the way that you process your own hormones.
Right.
And we know that all of our hormones play together, right?
Yep.
Like you can't affect your testosterone levels without affecting your cortisol levels, your human growth hormone levels, even your melatonin levels. And so I started to really realize like we don't have enough tools here for people, and there's got to be like kind of more involved. And then also like on the sedative side, because I know that this is something that comes up a lot, right? Where people often feel like, okay, I either want to go natural or I want to take this thing from my doctor. I think there's also a big kind of misunderstanding around even kind of like what sedatives actually do. And you can pull me back if you feel like I'm going
Yeah.
off course here a little bit.
Well, it's just leading to
But
more questions in my head.
sure.
So.
Great. So like giving like the comparison to say something like
Mhm.
weight loss, right? Weight loss and sleep, we can kind of think about them in a similar way in that there are these complex, multifaceted processes that are primarily controlled by hormones, that are affected by nutrients, and that are also deeply affected by our habits,
Right.
right? And so taking a sedative to fall asleep is kind of like taking Ozempic to lose weight.
Hmm.
You're not really actually addressing the thing that needs to happen, which is like, what is going on in your body that's making this not what you want, right? Because if you're somebody who's overweight, there's challenges either with your hormones, with your diet, or with your movement, right? Like your habits or your
Or all
nutrients,
the
right?
above.
Or all of the above, right? And if you try to solve that with something like Ozempic, we end up healthier. And sleep is really similar, that if you take a sedative for sleep, you will be unconscious, but you're not going to get the benefits of having actual real sleep. You're not going to wake up feeling good in the morning. You're just going to have had the experience of being knocked out at night.
So what does that do? So if we took a sedative or something like that, like how does that change the quality of our sleep?
That's a great question.
Well, thank you.
So, sleep quality is predicated on parts of your brain being able to communicate with each other,
Hmm.
right? So there's like all of these physiological processes that happen. You have these different electrical waves where you have different parts of your brain that pass information back and forth. It's how your emotional regulation happens, how your memories happen. It's how basically like kind of like the cleaning of the area around your neurons happens with like cerebral spinal fluid flowing through. And all of that's actually like very active. And sedatives just kind of like stop all of that from
Wow.
happening. And so you are not awake anymore, which can solve the frustration of not sleeping, but it actually prevents all of the benefits from sleeping. So you're literally preventing your brain from doing those super important processes. And in fact, some studies have shown that not only do you not form the memories that you should have formed, you actually start to have deletion errors of previous memories when you've been taking sedatives for a long period of
So,
time. The same thing
so like,
happens for people who drink a lot of alcohol over a
hmm.
long period of time, because alcohol is also a sedative and it will turn off certain parts of your brain, particularly the parts that are responsible for helping with REM sleep, which is really having a lot to do with motor skill development and emotional regulation.
Mm. That's interesting. I never thought about that. So I guess going back to or going to melatonin, and obviously that's the thing I would say in my opinion that separates third Z from most others in that sleep space, if you will, kind of thing. Um, so again, like as you were developing that for me, I'm really curious to like what led you or like what were the things or why and I know we can go to your blog, but like kind of talk me through
Sure.
the things that are in Third Z's formula that are good and that do help us get into that more kind of like natural sleep pattern.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great idea. So definitely, I agree with you. The not melatonin was kind of like the big thing where I was like, why don't we have something we can take that isn't just like single ingredients that can actually kind of work together to help this? And so the idea was, how do we support making sure that we have the chemistry that our brain needs to do sleep well?
Mhm.
So counteracting stimulants, being able to wind down at the end of the day is something huge,
Yep,
right? Like we all take, whether it's stimulants like exercise or being in front of screens or chemical stimulants like caffeine and
everywhere.
sugar, right? We all do it and we need to because we need to be on and alive and like do this kind of stuff. But then it's really hard once you get to the end of the day and you don't have something to help bring you in the other direction, right?
Mhm.
Like you've used all those resources to push you over here and it's like, okay, how do we come back here? So that was a big thing with like putting together my sleep stack was, what is it that we can use that will help with that wind down process that's more natural, more gentle, doesn't cause damage, doesn't turn off our brains, and if anything, actually helps to support the activity that is supposed to happen in our brains. So how do we feed the right biochemistry to make sure that we're having like deep sleep, REM sleep, the right brain waves at night, strong sleep spindles, like all of those things. And there aren't actually all that many things in the research that have been shown to do that
Mhm.
consistently and effectively. So one of the things is L-theanine. And so if you look in our product, there's 200 milligrams of L-theanine per serving. And L-theanine is really unique in that it does help to counteract stimulants specifically. So some people may have seen this before in an energy drink, because if you put a ton of stimulants in an energy drink and you stack it with L-theanine, you won't feel that jittery, overstimulated feeling because the
Mhm.
L-theanine is so good at helping to keep your nervous system calm and keep you from feeling overstimulated. And so if you use that when you're not hyperstimmed, it'll actually help you to relax and wind down and for your brain to produce alpha waves, which is the calm alert waves that you have when you're meditating, and also in that little window when you're going from being awake to actually being asleep. You know how you have that kind of like small window of a few minutes where you're like kind of here, kind of not here, and your brain's really quiet? L-theanine helps to do that as you're like transitioning towards falling asleep.
It's usually where my book falls down. I'm like, oh, okay, time to go to
Exactly, you
sleep.
hit yourself in the face when you
Yep.
turn the light off. Yeah. Um, the other thing that's in it is magnesium
Mhm.
bisglycinate. And the magnesium, and I think you've probably heard of magnesium long before you ever heard of third Z, is really important for balancing out a lot of our excitatory minerals. I don't think most people really think
Hmm.
of minerals as being excitatory, but
Yeah,
they
no, that's the
are.
first I've thought about that or heard that.
Oh, so this is going to get a little
That's all
nerdy, but when we
right.
look when we look at how our muscles fire and how our nerves fire,
Mhm.
they actually all function based on these
Yep.
electrolyte channels, right? So when we look at, say, taking like electrolytes and replenishing our electrolytes after a workout, a lot of us hear about that, right? The reason you need to replenish your electrolytes is because those electrolytes are really important for helping your nerves to fire and your muscles to contract, and they need to be in the right amounts in order for you to have appropriate firing. And so magnesium is one of the ones that helps to relax everything. So if you have too much sodium and calcium, you're going to actually like be a lot more trigger happy on firing your muscles and your nerves and a lot more kind of like excitatory. And so that's why, for instance, magnesium is often recommended for people who have muscle twitching and stuff like that,
Mm.
is because that can be a sign that you're not getting enough magnesium and then you're firing too easily. And so when our neurons fire too easily, then we're more excitatory in general, and that can also help prevent us from winding down and falling asleep at night. And so that's where like the magnesium really comes into play. It's also a building block for serotonin and melatonin, which are two really important brain chemicals that both contribute to your natural sleep cycles.
Right. Oh, that's fascinating. I mean, it makes sense once you explain it, but that was like the first time I heard of excited minerals or that's so cool. Now I'm
What
gonna
do I
lay in
do?
bed and
Like,
feel I'm gonna think about every twitch I have when I'm going to bed and kind of thing. So
you're gonna be like, was that too much
exactly.
salt or not enough magnesium? Yeah. And then the other two ingredients that are in it are the
Hmm.
GABA. And so GABA is actually a brain chemical that helps to relax. So most of your brain chemicals, again, are excitatory. Dopamine's excitatory, serotonin's excitatory in general, acetylcholine is excitatory. And we need those. We need them to focus. We need them to feel good. We need them to have motivation. But all day long, as you're having these things fire, GABA is coming in and keeping them in check. And then when you're getting towards the end of the day and you're needing to wind down, your GABA is putting them more in check, more in check, more in check. And then it also helps you to fall asleep and to maintain sleep at night.
Hmm.
And so when they've done studies on particularly women with insomnia, they've found that women with insomnia have about 30% less GABA than women who don't have insomnia. And so it's one of those pieces of like, we are constantly using our GABA in order to balance out stress and exciting things and all the stuff we're doing all day and focusing to the point where we're probably struggling to keep up with producing enough of it to actually have that proper blend of like being able to wind down naturally and for our bodies to just kind of keep us in check. And so that's why adding it to something that you take before bed can help to increase that amount at the time that you need it in order to help you wind down and then to maintain your sleep through the night.
No, yeah, I've personally never struggled with insomnia. I was a military guy. They taught us to sleep. You had 5 minutes, you didn't have anything to do, you could fall asleep right away. But that's great to know that. I did not know that about GABA. And it makes sense. Like if you're using that up throughout the day, then you might not have those stores left and kind of thing. So adding that into your sleep pattern is or sleep habit is good. So
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last ingredient that's in there is the collagen.
hmm.
I think most people think about the collagen and they're like, oh, great, well, it's for your muscles and your joints. And it definitely is for
Yep.
your muscles and your joints. It's very helpful for that, especially with long-term use. Um, it'll help to make sure that you're not breaking down your collagen faster than you're able to keep up with replenishing it. But the cool thing about collagen as well is that it's 1/3 this amino acid called glycine. And glycine is also something that your brain can use as what's called an inhibitory neurotransmitter or something to help with calming. And so there have been several studies over the last few years that have shown that if you take 3 grams of glycine before bed, which is actually the amount that's in about 10 grams of collagen,
Hmm.
hence 10 grams of
Yep.
collagen in 30, that people actually with brain scans, like polysomnograph brain scans at night, had better sleep architecture. So like better deep sleep, better REM sleep, stronger electrical activity in their brains,
Hmm.
and reported less fatigue the next day on the same amount of sleep. So for me, when we were first starting out and I was reading about glycine and learning about that and the collagen and all that, and I was like, well, I already take collagen, so
Yeah.
why not move it
I
to
had
the end
that
of the
same I
day
had
and
that
take it
same
then?
thought too when I first was exposed to it.
Yeah,
But it makes more sense now. Thank
you're
you.
welcome.
So I want to ask a question about another thing that's not in it that I'm kind of curious about is the CBD, the cannabis stuff. Again, I've never really played around with that much. Again, as a veteran, I've heard other buddies of mine that have gotten significant help from CBD, different types of CBD. But like why or like what would that possibly do to interrupt the formula or like our sleep habit?
Yeah, that is a really good question. So Um, there's a couple of reasons why we left out the CBD. One of them is just from like a regulatory standpoint, it makes it more challenging
Hmm.
for people like, active military service can't take it. There's certain people with other jobs that can't take it. And shipping it across borders becomes
Yep.
more challenging. Like it's just one of those ingredients that's also challenging to put into a product. And interestingly, for myself, fortunately, I'm from Canada. We're very lax on the cannabis laws, so it's
Yep.
very easy to get,
We're
and it's
following
very
suit in most areas around with you. So
yeah.
it's yeah.
You'll get there,
Yep.
U.S. You'll get
Exactly.
there. um, so I did do like quite a bit of experimentation with different cannabinoids, and what I think two things are true. One is that the research on these different cannabinoid substances and the research on the endocannabinoid system is all very new and it's growing. And I do think that there are some people who find a lot of benefit from using CBD, but I think it is also highly variable. So we're all obviously wired differently, have different genetics. And one of the things that we're learning about this endocannabinoid system is that people have very different ways of engaging with cannabis.
Hmm.
In that the different cannabinoids, whether it's CBD, THC, CBN, that are supposed to have different effects, can have wildly different effects on different people. And it also depends on, the purity levels, even what kind of plants they're coming from. Like it's still kind of a wild west kind of system. And I think that there's a lot of people who are like, oh, CBD is the greatest thing ever. And then there's a lot of people who said, well, CBD hasn't done anything for me. And for me, when I was making the initial Thursday formula and like working with what's the sleep stack that's going to work for me, I didn't find a lot of benefit from using CBD. So selfishly, it's not in there because it doesn't work for me.
Oh,
And if it works for other people, like great. I don't think that there's a particular detriment, particularly with CBD. There's some research with other cannabis, like with THC, that can suggest that it has some sedative effects where it
mhm.
is going to affect those brain processes at night, right? It is going to slow down some of that chemical and electrical activity that you want to be really robust at night to get good quality sleep and feel good in the morning. So some people do smoke a bit of weed or, eat or whatever and feel good when they wake up in the morning, but there are a lot of people who don't, who they'll wake up in the morning, they'll feel quite sluggish. So I would say for people who are experimenting in that realm, like pay attention how you feel, track your heart rate variability, take a look at how it's actually affecting your physiology overnight. Because if those markers are not great, like if your heart rate's staying pretty elevated at nighttime, even if you're sleeping, you're not getting deep restorative sleep. And so that might be something that you want to either like take down in terms of dosing or maybe try not, something different.
Yeah, no, again, I haven't played around with it. And I also think, I mean, again, very limited knowledge, but doesn't THC tend to stay in the body and the fat cells for like a long period of time too as well after?
Yeah, there can be, and again, there's like a lot of variability, right?
Hmm.
And it also depends on frequency and duration of use. So people who are consistent cannabis users, their bodies will also like store more of it in their fat cells, and
Mm.
then it's going to take a longer time to come out. Versus somebody who say like is a very occasional, once in a while THC user, you're going to have less of that. Like storage effect is going to clear out of your system and metabolize out faster.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I would say the biggest thing is just the government getting in the way of regulating and all that stuff, and getting across borders is definitely a pain in the butt, you
Yeah,
know. So
totally.
yeah. So I've got I sent it to you earlier, so I want to ask a question that one of our members sent to me, and I'm going to pull it up. I have it on email. And so this member has said that they have been using Thursday for 2 months now, and they really haven't, like, they without skipping a scoop kind of thing. They've done, but they don't think that their sleep. They don't feel like their sleep has gotten better. In fact, so much that they've gone to their PC, our primary care physician. Now this member has also been struggling with sleep for a while now, and so their PCP was talking about potentially prescribing a sleeping pill, but they're kind of our member. Whoops. Our member is worried, and I was like, "Hey, I'm not sure that, like you said, not really getting to the root cause of what's going on. I'm sure it's a lot of it depends, but is there something that um, we could pass on to that member kind of thing, like, hey, talk to your PC, or is there a different type of maybe a naturopathic doctor or something along those lines that you might recommend, like, hey, might have a different idea than kind of going straight to that sleeping pill per se?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it depends on their primary care provider
Hmm.
too, right? There's going to be different approaches to how they're going to assess and manage that. And like, I really feel for this person. It is so frustrating to try and solve something like that, right? Where you're like, okay, like I'm
Hmm.
doing the right things, right? And so, coming back to the analogy that I was using before around like sleeping can be kind of like weight loss, right? Where there's, hormonal regulation, there's nutrients, and then there's habits. And so all of these things come into play, but I think also sometimes we underestimate even when we're doing a lot of the right things, so we're like getting the right nutrients and we're trying to dial in like the habit, like, okay, I'm going to bed at the same time every night, or I'm waking up in the morning and I'm seeing bright sunlight and I'm doing that to try and adjust my daily rhythm and my cortisol and all that, right? There's lots of different habit things that we can try and dial in. But I think too, a lot of people underestimate the stuff that they're doing that may be counteracting all the good things that they're doing and putting in. And
Do you have,
I had like a very,
I was gonna say, do you have
like
some examples of
I
that? Kind of
was,
like what might, yeah, sorry.
yeah, I was actually going to say I haven't really. So my husband actually, he uses Thursday consistently, and when he
Veteran?
started using, yeah, when he started using our product a couple years ago, he's found, and we, track our sleeps and look at
Hmm.
our metrics and stuff, and he found uh, decided improvement in his heart rate at night, his heart rate variability, his length of sleep, sleep interruptions, like all these little measures, right? Um, but there was
There's the
still
but.
there was still definitely like room for improvement. And several months ago, he left the corporate job that he'd been working for the last 13 years, and his sleep has unilaterally improved. Like it
Bingo.
went from being like, say like a solid 7 every night to a solid 9 every night.
Nice.
And so I think it's really, and that was so eye opening for me because like there are so many things that we can do that we can put in that are good, but if we're also just having a lot that our bodies and brains and emotional systems are having to deal with in terms of stress that maybe we don't even feel like is stressful anymore because we're so used to it, I think we can often underestimate how that affects our hormone systems, our body's stress response, and our ability to regulate properly. And, anecdotally, I think there's a lot of people who know people who have had similar experience where, they've been trying to lose weight forever and then they go on vacation for 3 weeks and they drop 5 pounds like immediately, right? Or they switch jobs and they go from being, a shift worker to somebody who is a regular 9 to 5, and all of a sudden they can sleep better and, have lost weight and they're feeling happier and lighter and all those things. And so I would say that, yes, the right nutrients can be really important and can be helpful. And especially, sometimes we can't change those things, right? We can't change all of our habits. We can't build our life around our sleep routine. We can't leave the job that we have. We can't
Yeah.
leave the stressful partner that we're with because we're trying to work on things, like whatever it is. And so that will help, but it's not going to necessarily solve all of the issues. And it really is like a full faceted issue that somebody needs to look at when they're struggling with sleep, and especially if it's been like pretty bad.
Mhm.
I would say, getting your hormone levels assessed is a big one. And not even just like what are your levels, but when are they peaking? And so I know that there's a lot of functional medicine doctors or naturopaths who will do with this, where you do like samples of different hormones throughout a 24-hour period, because that can dramatically affect your sleep. If you're not having a proper cortisol peak first thing in the morning and your cortisol is peaking too late in the day, it's going to affect all of the other like hormone
Mm-hmm.
regulation downstream. And so all of your daily rhythms are going to be off. And that's going to affect a whole lot of things. So you want to see where and when and how much
Right.
your hormones are peaking at different times. And then I would start to also look at different things like nutrients, other things that they may be taking, like other supplements or pharmaceuticals, if that's coming into play, timing around those things. Can we switch them so they're further away from bedtime so they're less impactful? Without knowing the
Yeah.
person, it's kind of hard to say, but I would say like try and find a healthcare provider who's gonna like dig into this for you or with you and try to unravel what are the things that you're doing right, what are the things that we can improve on, and what are the things that are happening in your body that are not as they should be. Because when things are as they should be, you sleep well.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like when your
Yeah.
body's working well, you sleep well. And then having the additional nutrients just, pours gasoline on that. Versus, and it can be a stopgap, but I think for people who are like really struggling, looking at all these other things too is really important.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. One, that I appreciate that, so I can at least help them get in the right direction. Maybe answer that question a little bit deeper. So I appreciate that. Speaking of help, I think that's another good one too. Since you are a woman and I am not, like, so, and we have, and our membership is about 60/40. We have about 60% female at the gym, and of all ages. So I mean, I would say kind of touch upon the benefits and or like concerns potentially of using Third Z, with whether you're like in birthing or whether you're like menopause and like through that whole life cycle as a woman.
Yeah, totally. I'm feeling that right now. I'm about 3 weeks away from giving birth to my first baby.
Oh
So,
goodness.
so
Congratulations.
perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you. And that is something that comes up. It's actually, when we were, even with sleep, like I think, and a lot of your female members will be able to attest to that. Even like over the course of the month, they will find that there are weeks that they will sleep better no matter what they're doing, and sleep worse kind of no matter what they're doing,
Hmm.
because it is so, like, hormones are so real.
Yep.
And they really do control a lot. And so the official position that I need to take on pregnancy and postpartum, like when you're breastfeeding, is to talk to your healthcare provider and
Yep.
ask their advice, because they're going to be the best able to give you advice on what you should and shouldn't be taking, especially during a time where your body's changing a lot.
Because it's just like you said, every single pregnancy is different, just like every other person is different hormonally and everything else too.
Absolutely. But I will say I've had a few people, and I can give my own kind of experience as well.
Hmm.
I had a mama reach out to me a little over a year ago now, actually. She also was a gym owner and had had twins and had really been struggling with postpartum after the
Hmm.
twins. And her doctor had actually recommended for her to try using GABA in that period
Hmm.
to help improve her mood regulation. And she had found that really helpful. And then she actually decided to buy Third Z and just start taking Third Z at night, because it already had
Right.
the GABA in it, and it had collagen and magnesium and other stuff that she wanted to be taking, and that she found it really helpful for improving her sleep rhythms at night. And one of the things I should also add that is a nice thing about um, a sleep product that doesn't have sedatives in it is that if you are a new parent, if you are a first responder, if you're somebody who needs to be able to wake up after you've fallen asleep and still be really
Oh yeah.
functional, it's not going to incapacitate you that way. Because I think some people get concerned with, okay, I could take something to help me sleep, but then if my baby wakes up in
Yep.
the night, then
No,
am I going to
that's
be too much
I didn't
capacity?
actually didn't think about that, but thinking back, I have a 9-year-old. We only have one, and I remember those days vividly. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And you don't want to do other stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like, you drinking alcohol or anything else that's going to like incapacitate you
Mhm.
is not something that you want to do when you have a little kid around. So, and then in terms of menopause, the menopause thing is really interesting, because I have had people who have reached out and said, absolutely, I started using your product. It was so helpful. I was able to like fall asleep better. My sleep had been so much worse since I started menopause, and then has helped. But I've also had women who've reached out who have said, I tried it and it wasn't the solution.
Right.
It wasn't the solution that I was looking
Hmm.
for. And so I think, again, it's coming into looking at what are the key things for each individual person that is the thing that's contributing to you not sleeping well. And so for some people, I think there's like the hormone regulation piece. And for men who are, typically above 45, 50, your body starts declining in its ability to produce melatonin. And for women who are going through menopause, often their bodies will start to also produce less melatonin. And so there are things that you can do to naturally increase your melatonin production, like using magnesium and making sure that you're moderating your sunlight. So lots of sunlight during the day, especially
Hmm.
early in the day, and making sure that you're really like keeping things dark and dim at nighttime. And that will help your body to stay in its own rhythms and to produce its own melatonin. But that may be a time and a place where somebody starts to find that having melatonin, and I would say like super low dose melatonin, like when we look at the literature, as little as like 0.3 milligrams can be very
Wow.
helpful.
Hmm.
Whereas I think a lot of people go out and they're like,
Five.
you can buy 10 milligram tablets, so they get
Whoa.
them. And it's like, I've had people tell me they're taking 40 milligrams of melatonin, and
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh, that sounds insane.
that's too many.
Yeah.
So minimal effective dose.
Yeah.
And you may find even using both, right? Like having something that's going to help the rest of your sleep architecture and adding
Hmm.
in a little bit of melatonin might be the sweet spot for you. So I think menopause is particularly challenging because you're seeing a lot of hormone
Yep.
change happening all at once. And over the course of a couple of years, the way that you're experiencing that can be different as well. But I do I'm a fan of trying kind of like minimal effective dose, trying what's going to be the most natural working with your body versus trying to override your body systems is usually a great place to start.
Gotcha. No, that's great. I mean, that's a lot of things, and I would say also too would be one of those like talk to your doctor kind of thing and whatnot.
For sure.
Um, so I would say like so kind of explain to me a little bit. Again, and it's generally speaking, but like best practices when it comes to like somebody trying Third Z for the first time. Yeah, I'm kind of one of these people that's like, hey, you should give everything like 28 to 30 days, like give it a month kind of thing and see what happens. Take something out or add something in, like, but very one thing at a time. So like, what's a good, again, generally speaking, kind of process for somebody who's interested in starting with it? Like, what are some of the things they should do?
Yeah, that's a great, and I like that heuristic of like try something
Yeah.
for a few weeks. I'm totally like that too, right? Like your body needs time to
Mhm.
adjust and tend to get used to things. And one of the interesting things about say 30 is that it has both like kind of short-term and
Mhm.
long-term effects. Where short-term you should feel more relaxed from the L-theanine and the GABA, and like a lot of people will notice some improvements in terms of their sleep quality, how they feel in the morning from the first night. But some of the other things also need to build, like the magnesium, especially because a lot of us are magnesium deficient. There's going to be a loading period for that. And so you're going to have to kind of like build up your magnesium stores to reach that sufficiency before you really kind of start to get the benefits of that system kind of coming on board and it helping to support your other neurotransmitter production. And then the collagen as well builds over time. And especially if you're looking for like less soreness in the morning, improved joint health, typically you don't feel the joint health effects of collagen until you've been taking it for a few weeks, and then the anti-inflammatory stuff really starts to kick in, and then within about 8 to 12 is when you're actually building up your joints more. So I would say best practices are actually start taking it and taking it consistently. And one of the things that helps with that is it will also help to anchor your sleep schedule. So if your sleep
Mhm.
schedule's been all over the place, set yourself an alarm, a nighttime alarm. And that's your time when mix your thirds, you brush your
Yeah.
teeth, get into bed, like do that thing and do that consistently. And you should start to feel that like your whole sleep cycle and your whole process is going to start to get better and your body's going to get more efficient at sleeping. And that's where like people really get the benefit and see the benefit. And then I have found that even then if I miss a night here or there, I don't actually notice like, oh shoot, that was an awful fall off and now I had a terrible night's sleep, because my body's so much more used to sleeping well and has sufficient levels of a lot of those nutrients because I've been using it
Mhm.
consistently. I will say this as well for people who are new to the product. Some people find because it increases your brain activity overnight that they have a lot more dreaming at first. And sometimes a lot more dreaming can not always be like the most nice or pleasant dreams.
Right.
It's fairly rare that we get people who are like, oh, I had nightmares. Whereas I've actually heard a lot of people can get really violent nightmares from melatonin.
Mm.
But I would say that some people are like, whoa, I did so much dreaming that I almost felt like I was not sleeping deeply. And that will pass after usually the first like 5 or 6 days. But if you're one of those people and you're finding it like uncomfortable, you can also just ratchet down the amount that you're taking.
Mhm.
Like take a half
Like
scoop
a half scoop.
or take three
Right.
quarters of a scoop, and then you might, go up to a full scoop. But dosing is difficult too because, like, I'm a 135-pound woman when I'm not pregnant, and and my husband's like a 200-pound man.
Right.
And if we both buy the product and we both get the same size scoop, well, it doesn't make sense that we're taking the same
Yeah.
amount,
No, that
right? So I
makes
think
sense.
there's the nice thing about a powder is you can kind of easily moderate it, like take a little less or take a
Mhm.
little more to match how much you feel like your body needs. And if you're a bigger person or you find you're somebody who just is a fast metabolizer typically of supplements and pharmaceuticals, if that's a thing for you. Some people need to take 2 Tylenol instead of
Mhm.
one to
Yep.
get that effect. Like all substances are going to be like that. Your body's different. The way you respond to them is different. So I would also say as you're starting out, maybe start with half a scoop and see how that goes for you. And then like figure out where your sweet spot is as well.
Yeah, and I guess like so it obviously like play around with it and try it, but like for somebody who's got it dialed in, is there any I would say benefit or like a concern? You said like if you miss 1 or 2 days, no big deal. But is
Mhm.
this isn't something that you should really kind of cycle on or cycle off, like 30 days on, 30 days off, or anything like that, right?
Yeah, not really. So that's an interesting question I've been asked. I feel like I've been getting that a lot recently, actually. Maybe
I
people
thought I was
are
being
talking
original.
about cycling in the zeitgeist here. So with particularly like the magnesium and the collagen, as I said, like you're just
Mhm.
going to be using those and the GABA. Your body's just like going through that all the time, and so you need to be like constantly like topping that up, right? Those are actually like nutrients that you need more of. And the L-theanine might be one of the few things that's in it that you could say like build a tolerance to in terms of how
Mhm.
you feel. But I will say that the L-theanine, you probably shouldn't really build a tolerance to it, and here's why. Typically, we build a tolerance to things that act directly on our receptors and that are in our bodies for a long period of time. So, a good example of that is caffeine. So, caffeine acts directly on our adenosine receptors and has a fairly long half life. For most people, it's around 4 hours, which means typically you're going to have caffeine in your system for 8 hours. And so, what happens is when you have caffeine circulating around in your body for that long and engaging with your adenosine receptors, your body's actually going to down regulate your sensitivity or your total number of adenosine receptors. And that's where you end up having a tolerance to caffeine because your body's actually less receptive and you need more of it to produce the same amount of effect.
Right.
But L-theanine doesn't act directly on your receptors. It actually helps to promote um, your own production of other chemicals. It
Mhm.
actually works on your GABA pathway and some of your other pathways. And so it's not actually directly, for instance, engaging with your GABA receptor. It's helping to like push your body to make more of its own stuff. And it has a really short half-life. So the half-life of L-theanine for most people is around 50 minutes. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
only really sticking around in your system for a couple of hours, which isn't all that long for your body to start to make changes to its physiology in order to downregulate against having something in its system that way.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's cool. Well, I think we're getting, I mean, I'm pretty close to the end here. And outside of your new little one that's on the way, is there anything new that Third Z's looking at? Or I know you guys just recently came out with the travel packs, which is awesome. We got some of those. Thank you for that. Some free samples that we were able to hand out to our members and everything. But is there anything new that you can tell us about or that you're looking at or, hope to do one day?
Yeah, that's a great question. So travel packs was a big one. We were so
Mhm.
happy
Yeah.
to. It was a whole project. It was more than I don't know why I thought it was going to
Like
be easier
it
than it was,
shouldn't have
but
been that hard, but it was.
what it was. I think I don't know. Maybe everything's
Yeah,
like that in life.
exactly.
So travel packs is a big one. We were really happy to roll those out. We actually recently did roll out shipping internationally. So
Hmm.
previous to that, we were only in Canada and the US, and now we can ship kind of anywhere in the world, which is exciting
Yep.
for us. We would love to grow to the point where we're also warehousing maybe in Europe and Australia so that we can have shorter
Yeah.
delivery times, that kind of thing. Probably the biggest kind of like new thing coming down the pipe is we're just on the cusp. I think we're waiting for the delivery of our own branded external packaging so that we're using these like recycled kind of bubble mailer things that are
Oh,
actually
okay.
gonna say Third
Yeah.
on them on the outside. So we'll have like a kind of nicer unboxing experience, which I'm excited about.
Yeah. No.
I don't know how much other people are excited about that, but those are the big things. And then other than that, it's really maybe in the future thinking about different flavors. That's something
Hmm.
that we frequently get asked for, and it's something that like we recognize as like flavor is difficult, not something like somebody's yuck is somebody else's
Yep.
yum, and so it's hard to
Absolutely.
make everybody happy with flavor. So I would love to get to the point where we have 2 or 3 options for people, and that would probably be our next kind of step in that direction would be to have a couple of different flavor options for people.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say when I was talking to your team and setting this up, I was saying that like if there was one thing that I could just wave a magic wand, it would be maybe having like a hot flavor. Like I love the I mean the flavor is amazing, but kind of in the when it's 20 degrees outside here, 20 degrees Fahrenheit I should say, but it's freezing outside. It's like chugging that cold water is not how I'm gonna get to bed. I like that little warm. little thing. So you could tell me that or not tell me that, but that's just one of those things. Is like if I could wave a magic wand, that would be really cool.
That's so okay. So two things. One, you can actually do it
Hmm.
with warm water and make it almost like a kind of like hot fruity
I
tea.
haven't tried it. I'm a
And I
little
know.
nervous to be honest with that.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
No, it
I
actually
should
goes
try it
quite
though.
well. It dissolves really
Hmm.
nicely that
Oh,
way, and it tastes pretty.
even in cold water, it dissolves
Yeah.
great.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. It's something that we've like really worked on
Hmm.
when we're developing the formula too, because that can be off-putting for people when it doesn't.
Yep.
But yeah, I think more like people want like a hot
Yeah.
chocolate or a kind of
Or a
caramelly.
tea kind
And
of thing or something.
yeah, the hard part with that, and this is just kind of like maybe more information than you need, but amino acids, which most of our product is amino
Hmm.
acids, tend to have kind of a bitter flavor profile if you have them
Yep.
just on your own. We've actually had people say that they want us to roll out like an unflavored version.
Hmm.
There is no unflavored version. There's just bad.
Yeah.
There's
No, no,
just
no.
like no added flavor, in which case it tastes bad. And so amino acids don't have a particularly nice flavor on
Hmm.
their own. And because they're a little bit bitter, having fruity flavors with the amino acids actually goes a lot better. I've had some like collagen drinks before that have had other amino acids in them that were in that kind of like chocolate and caramelly kind of realm that they have like a really kind of strange aftertaste, and that was why we veered in
Yep.
more of the fruity direction. But we will work on it. If and when we come back to our next flavor, I will keep that
Well, if
in
I
mind, and
come across a
hopefully we
magic
can.
wand, I'll
Yeah,
send it to you. So
awesome. If we could just get a little extra
yeah,
magic to make that
exactly.
work,
Um,
that'd be great.
well, yeah, no, I was gonna say that's again all information that's great. I feel so much smarter. I really appreciate, and now I feel more educated, so I can pass this on to our members and everything. And there's a
Awesome.
ton that I learned, so I really appreciate your time. Is there anything you want to ask me in particular, kind of thing, or I mean, again, I really appreciate it.
I mean, it's so interesting. I love hearing the questions that like
Hmm.
you bring to the table as somebody who's been such a great partner with us and has had members that are using the product. So and that question about like what would you change or what would you like to see more from us?
Hmm.
Other than flavor, is there anything else that you think that we can do either as a company or as a product to help support you guys?
No, I think I mean I'm sure obviously you're looking like for like ambassadors or like obviously you partner with CrossFit and they're in the different athletes and all that other fun stuff. That's always fine. Again, we're a gym that's like nobody's going to the games, but we like to talk about who is and who isn't and all that other fun stuff kind of thing too. So I was gonna say I hope that's something that you guys are doing. And but again, I recognize like it's just us out. Really, it's the grassroots efforts and anything that we can do. Trying to tag you guys in as many posts as we can and getting people exposed to it. So, I mean, that's what I hope we can do for you. So,
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And like to be like super candid, obviously we love working with like some of our athletes that we've had use a product like Jason
hmm.
Grubb and these like awesome
Yep,
athletes who are going to the games are amazing, but they're not even really who the product was made for.
right.
Because so many of these like super high level athletes, they can revolve their whole life around their sleep schedule and their training
Must be
schedule,
nice.
right? Exactly. It's the rest of us that have full time jobs and families and all this other stuff that we need to coordinate who I think need a little bit more help. So it's like absolutely people like you and your members that are like what we have are trying to the people that
Hmm.
we're trying to support and not really like the huge big
Yeah.
name athletes. Like it's great when they pick up our product and they love it, but we're doing it for you guys.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah,
So
I know. And like I said, and it's always fun to like, like, oh, I think the same thing as Jason Grubb and all that fun stuff. It's just cool to do that. But I appreciate that.
awesome.
So, yeah, I'll let
Great.
you go. I was gonna say, like, it's really funny that you said you're expecting your new little one. I tell any expectant dad that typically that I talk to, it's like, oh, just go sleep a lot right now. Like, I don't know if you can technically bank it or not, but just go sleep as much as you can. So that's really funny and
Yeah.
everything. So hopefully you can do that too as well.
I'm trying
Exactly.
to.
But I know. But ours
Thanks so
ours
much.
did not like to sleep at all. Still
Uh,
doesn't. So it's yeah, it's
well,
rough sometimes.
I think that's coming. I'm
Like
gearing up for it. So,
you'll be I think you'll be fine. I think you'll be fine. So well, thank you so much, Dr. Justine. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, have a great night.
All right, have a great night. Bye.
Bye.